Hello and welcome to the JCN Clinic podcast show. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Carissa.
Today we are talking all about milk alternatives. So we're going to break down all of your different alternative milks as opposed to regular cow's milk, which means we're going to be talking everything from goat to soy to different nut milks, rice. There'll probably be some others I haven't thought about. I did think about camel milk after I wrote down this list for today, actually. Yeah, did you? Yeah. So we're going to discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly, which sounds a little bit ominous, doesn't it? The bad and the ugly. You'll probably find as Chris and I talk through this that we'll be a little bit more forgiving than maybe some of the other conversations that you might have heard in this space. I don't know. I don't actually know because I haven't spoken to Chris about it. I'm just hypothesizing that might actually come up. Yeah, we're going to dive into it and talk about these milks. I thought what we might do is break them down one by one. And there's going to be some crossovers though, right? Like obviously as far as some of these ingredients. So I guess when we first talk about milk alternatives, just to define that, I feel like it's pretty obvious, but generally I can hear Zaylee snoring.
Can you? Sorry.
Our listeners probably can't, but I'm just like, what's that noise? She's so hilarious.
Chilled there on the side. Hey, baby cakes.
So why we want to have this discussion and what milk alternatives are. So milk generally thought of as cow's milk and cow's milk products. That's the most common milk on the market because of a lot of the gut issues that we deal with at the clinic and beyond gut issues. A lot of maybe health issues stemming from the gut. We do see a lot of food intolerances, and one of the big ones is cow's milk. So that opens up a big space where we're often referring our clients to different milk sources. And this conversation, we've touched on it in other podcasts, but not into this depth. It's actually huge. Like we talk about this every single day with clients, wouldn't you say?
Literally.
Yeah. And they want to know, like, for obvious reasons, like if we're talking about use different products to regular cow's milk, they want to know, well, what am I using? What's best for me? Like what products should I buy? I wonder, we'll probably mention some brands. We don't want to, I don't want to diss anyone too badly, but who knows where we'll end up with Carissa and I.
Yeah, we'll try not to diss anyone. I also think, I think too, it's actually probably a good topic because I literally just have my few that I recommend, and I probably don't, and I don't really deviate from that with my clients because I've literally got literally probably 2 or 3 brands that I will recommend. I know, and there's probably several more on the market now. But I also think too, last time we covered this, or even just covered like, which I know we're going to talk about, like just some of the things that are in them, that has changed even a bit significantly since we last talked about it. Like I think companies are getting a bit more clever with what they're adding into these milks, so we have to be a bit more onto it when we're recommending them and how much and stuff like that. But I just got sick of companies changing what they were adding, so I've become really pigeonholed with what I recommend, which is probably, it's good for us to do this podcast because we can unpack what good ones there are in all of them for people that aren't necessarily a client of the clinic. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm curious about yours as opposed to mine even, because I would say I'm the same. And then sometimes, I'll go into the supermarket, particularly when I'm in Brisbane, and see like such a wider array of brands and things that I haven't even tried. But I thought let's first start with I wanted to talk about goat milk. I guess in a way we could probably put camel milk into this too, but it's just worth mentioning because before we get into the completely dairy-free, we do see a significant, I'm going to say maybe what am I going to give it as a percentage? 50 to 40% of clients that once they've worked through their gut issues, they're generally pretty good with goat or sheep milk alternatives. Goat milk, though, isn't particularly a flavor that everyone likes. Mostly cheeses and so forth are okay, but actually drinking goat milk is not to everyone's taste.
I found that.
Have you had camel milk? I haven't. I don't think I've had it.
I've tried camel milk and I didn't mind it. It's just, again, it's the price point that puts everyone off that I know.
Ah, right. I don't even know what it costs.
It's about, well, last time I looked at it, and again, this was a little while ago, so it's probably because the main company in at least Brisbane, I think they stock Australia-wide actually, but are responsible for a lot of it. When they first came on the scene, we were talking $25 to $30 for a litre of camel's milk.
Wow.
Which is just
Did
wild.
we talk to them with the clinic?
We did. Yeah, it was Summerland Camels.
There's something, wasn't there? It was ages ago.
Yeah, I can't remember. I feel like we either got them on or because we definitely got the chef on from Wild Canary, and he was working with them at the time. So I can't remember if we could probably go back. But the thing around the camel's milk was that and I'm probably going to say this wrong, and I should have known this before I actually said it on a podcast, but it was something around the immunoglobulin content of it. Was something, and I think even maybe the vitamin A, from memory, this is going back probably 5 or 6 years, guys, so sorry if I'm not 100% accurate, and again, it could have changed a bit from there, but was something crazy. So they were doing research into camel's milk because of its high immunoglobulin content at like healing the gut and looking at that. So I think but also too, so there'd be the method of actually you getting the milk from camels and making it, totally okay for retail, which is why it was so expensive, but also too that some of the health benefits that it promised. But I don't know if that's still the case, if it is that expensive. I'm hoping now that obviously it's taken off a little bit, which it has, like especially Summerland camels, they're still going, and their camel farm has grown exponentially. They even have signs up on the road now, when you drive out that way. So I imagine that it's probably a bit more of a cost-effective milk now.
I just haven't seen it around.
Yeah, from a taste point of view, I actually didn't think it was as bad as goat's milk, to be fair. So, but in saying that, I hate the taste. I don't like the taste of cow's milk. I never really have. So for me, even cow's milk is sour and weird to me. And I thought that since I was in my teens. So I'm not someone who enjoys the taste of cow's milk. I can eat feta and cheese and those sorts of things, and same with goat's milk. Cheese products, I love them, but I don't personally even like the taste of dairy-based milk. So I feel like goat's milk and then camel's milk, it all tastes a bit weird to me. So
I think the longer you haven't had actual animal milk, the more like the taste is quite a punch in the face. As far as it's pretty extreme. I even notice that when I do have even now like goat cheese and so forth, like from not having it for a long time and then going back to it. But like the goat's milk, because the protein in the milk is a different structure, essentially think of it, guys, as being really like a smaller structure. It's generally easier on the gut, and for absorption purposes, it doesn't tend to, not absorption, from immune purposes, it doesn't tend to trigger an immune response looking so potentially foreign to our immune system. So you see it a lot with kids being able to tolerate the goat versus the cow's milk formulas. So that's why we find a lot of people can tolerate goat or sheep. And it's just that goat milk is a relatively affordable option. You can buy it in a carton in a supermarket. Not all of them. There used to be that Paul's brand. Again, I'm not sure if they've updated to some other brands. I'm sure there are. But the flavor of it is definitely an acquired taste. I used to use it ages ago and actually went through a stage of really liking it. And then I just stopped using it. I can't remember why. But it's one of the things, I guess, as far as the good things about it, also is that goat and sheep milk products, I've never had sheep milk straight. I've never been able to source it, but they are very, very high in calcium, actually higher in calcium than Chris is like, if you're watching this on YouTube, she always looks like she's going to vomit at the thought of sheep milk. I think it would be better. I don't think it'd be as like bucky. Do you know what I mean by bucky? Like goat milk.
I can't do sheep's milk fucking anything, mate. I can't do
really?
No.
Actually, I do know that about you. You can't do that Meredith's sheep's yogurt. Yeah.
I love Meredith's goat's yogurt, but the sheep, my fucking God. Like I think we were just traumatized. Just the lanolin, because lanolin, my mum used lanolin based everything when we were kids. Like it was just such a viable, it's an oil, right? Lanolin. So but also in like fat. It's a fat, but then also in the building industry and machine industry, like I've got memories of my dad. Like I can't remember what he used to, but just I don't know if it went on to timber or if it was on, you know, as the thing. And then when I lived up the mountain, they used to use lanolin. Like, oh, it's so ingrained in my psyche as not a food. So when I try, anything, I'm just like, no way. It's like, I don't know if anyone else has ever been scarred by this, and but fisherline, do you know what fisherline is?
The name's familiar.
So fisherline is what my dad used to use as like a type of rust proofing in his car back in the day, before we had like actual electronic rust conversion, you know, things that you could do, which what we can do now. But fisherline was just a very cheap oil. It was basically a fish oil. So you can imagine what a cheap rank fish oil that you could use in four-wheel drives and stuff as rust prevention, and then you clean your fishing rods with it. So just fish oil to me, if it's got even, I'm like up chuck, and I love seafood and fish. I'll eat it till the cows come home. But just that, there's just certain things that fuck you up as a kid, right? Lanolin and fisherline. Thank you. Anything lanolin or fisherline based.
Oh, that's funny. Anyway. So I think that's it with goat milk. I mean, yeah, so calcium content, great. Like that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that you can really smash a calcium content out of the park with having goat and sheep milk alternatives. So if you like the milk, if you don't like it straight, like that's obviously pretty intense, it might be something you can use in cooking, like as a base to white sauces or in smoothies. Like it's something to experiment with if you know that you're okay with goat milk products, to see where that sits for you. I don't think there's anything particularly bad about it at all. It's just purely if you tolerate it as a milk product still, like as an animal milk product, and two, whether you literally like the taste of it. But there's no sort of bad or I feel like dodgy products in that space on the market.
No, none that I've seen. So
yeah, but should we go on to soy? Soy milk.
Yeah, let's unpack soy, because I feel like it's a good one. There's still a lot of stigma around it. Again, like all the milks we're going to chat, there's good and crap on the market. So
yeah, do you want to speak to soy first?
Yeah, I think soy has been given a bad rap over the years. So I think if you're someone who's still in the soy space of soy being bad for human health, I think we know now from research and all of that has primarily been debunked, as long as we're talking about whole food soy products. So I don't really know where the research stands at the moment on things like soy proteins. I still feel like they're probably quite immune triggering, and probably also are cheaper depending on what sort of food we're talking about, and potentially in the purpose of milk, or maybe some protein powders and stuff like that. Like soy proteins themselves could pose problems, like depending on their origin, GMO status, and things like that. So I think I would still put a caution over having high volumes of anything that's made primarily from a soy protein isolate or on its own. But if we're talking about something that comes from a whole food source, so a whole soybean that has gone on to make, non-GMO soybean, that I think personally, and obviously from research in terms of when we're talking about hormones and I was going to say polyphenols. What's the word I'm looking for, Jess? Help my brain.
Phytoestrogens.
Thank you.
Phytoestrogens.
Come on, brain. I'm going to say polyphenols. Then I'm all for them. So I have no issues with soy milk. But again, we need to do, with all of this stuff, we need to read the label. We need to know what kind of soy milk we're having. Where's the source of the soy actually coming from? Is it coming from a whole food soy source? Or are we talking about a soy protein isolate? And then are we talking about a GMO or something like that? Like, that's my sort of stance on the soy milk. And I know that's what we're here to unpack today. So firstly on the soy, whole food soy, I'm totally for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one that we still get asked about considerably in clinic by clients who are just questioning if we are talking about dairy free. They are like, can I use soy? Is soy bad? Or I thought soy was bad. Like it really was something that took off, I would say, more in the I don't know. I feel like maybe the 90s. I feel like in the 80s it was still like soy was really cool. It was like the new kid on the block, and then maybe more in the 90s. But there's still a very strong hangover of questioning soy. And as Carissa said, yeah, it can be is a wonderful source of nutrition. But yeah, those whole food sources, looking for soy milks that are based on whole soybeans and then not the non-GMO, which is pretty common in Australia.
So common.
It's probably more in the States that I think you'd see more variation with like the crappier, like genetically modified soy that's on the market. But yeah, I don't see a lot of it. I think a lot of our brands here are pretty savvy with that. The good things about soy too, definitely, is that it can, particularly from a soybean base, like as Chris was saying, when the soy protein isolates and the higher proteins in that may be problematic for some, may even from a food intolerance point of view as well. But the soybeans as a base, we're also getting a relatively nice amount of protein from a whole food source, which is quite nice from a milk. Like regular cow's milk definitely, and the goat's milk, I actually didn't mention that, can be nice sources of adding protein. But as we get further into like the nut milks and rice milks, there's less of that. So I do love that about soy, like how you can add it into your diet to just kind of give things a bit of a bump up. And it's quite creamy and quite lush. Like,
I was going to say from a taste point of view, like if I go out for a coffee and they've got a good quality soy milk, I will choose a soy milk over a nut milk. If they've got a good quality one, like I don't go out for coffee much these days because we have a machine at home, but a good quality soy milk, like the flavor is really there for me in terms of like, and it can be there in a carton that has little shit added to it. Like, you know, it might just have like a calcium substrate added to boost its calcium content. It's got but it's a beautiful, creamy, like you said, luxurious milk when it's done right. And so I really rate a good soy milk.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, that's what I was going to say, like with a soybean based milk, as far as like hormone effects, like as Chris was saying before, like the soy has really been disproven to be like this estrogenic compound. It's more of like, we've talked about this quite a lot in other podcasts, how it's more of a modulator, but in its whole food source, like it's such a more gentler approach as opposed to like having really high amounts, like very, very high amounts of, say, something like soy protein isolate every day. Like we're not really talking so much about a food at that point. So I just think that's another interesting point when you're comparing someone having extreme amounts of soy protein isolate, that isolated protein content, richer in certain types of compounds versus just the whole bean. There's also the FODMAP component too, right, with soy. So I don't know, like how have you found your clients with soy in regards to FODMAPs? Like I haven't personally had too many problems with like a good quality soy without, which we'll get into some of the additives.
I would agree. Like I feel like when people tell me they react to soy milk, even if they are a foddy or not, one of my foddies. I prefer to actually have a look at the type of soy milk they're drinking and see what else is added to it. And I usually find that it's actually something else added to the soy milk, whether it's a plant oil or a thickener or that something that, you know, they're sensitive to. Like there's so many things that
Carrageen, is that what it is?
That's what I was going to say.
I'm probably saying it wrong. Sorry guys.
Carragini, but that's not it. That's a place of Northern Territory or Western Australia or something. So no, I typically find, even from a FODMAP perspective, I don't find a lot of people reacting to it. In saying that, I also going to put the little thing over that I don't have a lot of clients that consume a heap of soy milk. So I still think it has that stigma, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame. But I think it's one of those ones, like I wouldn't say a high percentage of my clients are using a lot of soy milk, but in saying that, the ones that do, if there's any reactions, it's usually not from the soy itself. From a FODMAP perspective, it's due to what else has actually been added to make it a thick, glossy milk, which is the shit we're trying to avoid anyway.
So that's where, this is going to start to cross over into some of these other milks we'll talk about. So when you're looking at these soy milks, what we're looking for is something made from whole soybeans. So if you look at the ingredients, it will literally just say whole soybeans as opposed to soy protein isolate. But then a lot of these milks, including soy, can have added thickeners and gums as binding agents, essentially to make them a little bit more sort of thicker and luscious. And you'll see generally more of them in the cheaper milk. Sorry, guys, but this is where you pay for what you get for. Actually, to a point, because then you could argue that with some of the barista blends. But essentially, the more the thickeners and gums are in there, it means with some of these milks, they can get away with putting less of the whole ingredient in, and then it'll make it a little cheaper to make. So if you think about it, it makes sense. Like if you've got a very high soybean content, it's going to be very creamy and luscious on its own. But if it's very minimal and then a lot of water, like it can be a bit watery. So if they add in thickeners and gums, it'll like bind it all up and hold it together, stop it from splitting. And look, these thickeners and gums, they're going to vary in context. Like this is where I think Carissa and I are going to be very lenient depending on the person, because depending on, I guess, to a point what they are, like a lot of them aren't anything super worrisome. Like a lot of them are just different types of like guar gums and xanthium gums and these sort of kind of plant-based binders, or some of them are more kind of what would you call them, like I want to say mechanically made, but that's not the right word, but I think you know what I mean. They're not carcinogenics or anything along those lines. Probably the main thing that we see in clinic is how they affect the gut microbiome. That's where there's some big question marks around them. So if you are a very sensitive person, you have gut issues, you have SIBO, you have bacterial imbalances, they can be really, really problematic. And there is some research that sort of looks into how they generally affect the microbiome and how they may like affect growth patterns of the microbiome. So I think that they are important to consider, like if they are in your milks, like how regularly you're having them. I personally like to, which I guess this is going to come up with all these milks, like choose milks where I can without them, but I don't stress if like I'm going out to a cafe or I'm having milks in other places where they're in there, because I don't feel like I'm doing any major damage to myself and like my gut can handle that. I feel the same about the sugars as well. Like I like to pick a milk that doesn't have added sugars in it, but then again, like where am I at, or where is that person at or client at with the sugar that's added to a milk? And most of the sugars that are added to are probably in those cheaper ones where they're trying to like do something with the taste. It's like we've got water with 2% soy, and then like how do we make this taste like something palatable? Let's add sugar.
Exactly. No, I tend to agree. Like, I'm not like, again, personally at home, the milk that I use doesn't have any sugar, any gums, or any oils added to it. And that's just what I use at home all the time. And I can still froth that with my coffee machine and get a beautiful frothy creamy milk because I've got fucking skills. But
guys, she is an ex barista, a bloody good one. So
but in saying that, at home. But if I go out, it just depends on what I feel like and what they've got. Like if they don't have a good quality soy milk, and the best thing they've got is what's the Milk Lab almond. I just have Milk Lab almond if I'm having a coffee when I'm out. Like I said, I actually don't get coffee out that often. I do often, if it's a good coffee shop, I will just have a black coffee, because if it's a good coffee shop, a black coffee is top notch for me. But I think when you're getting into even adding the sugars and things like that obviously takes us into the rice milk space, because there is a place where I will, for my clients, depending on what their beverage of choice is, like I'm not going to, like a lot of the rice milks will have a sweetener added, I find, because rice milk itself is bland as shit. So they will add something. Some of the better quality ones will add like a rice malt syrup, and then some of them will just add brown sugar. Like, let's be honest. And again, it depends on my client. Like, I'm not going to say go out and consume shit tons of rice milk that's got rice malt syrup. But if someone's a tea drinker, and this is where I find rice milk can be really beneficial as a dairy substitute. my client's a black tea drinker and they're used to having a tea, like a black tea, and they don't like drinking black tea, my first recommendation is rice milk, because it's just got, really, good. I'm glad to hear that, because I feel like I've said that to someone once and they were really sort of like, oh, I can't believe you'd even recommend that. It's got sugar in it. And I'm like, but we're going for taste. You're literally going to have probably 50 mils of it a day. You know, like it's not, you know, it's not the end of the world if that's something that you enjoy doing. Your microbiome agrees with it. And then primarily the rest of what we're using is going to be something that doesn't have sugar in it, you know, and we're not cooking, you know, so it's all like, again, it's always about balance and the client in front of me. But rice milk for me definitely can be made of total shit, but there are better quality ones. Like it can have a lot of gums and thickeners because it's so thin by nature. We're literally trying to get protein out of rice and add water to it. It is not really a milk substitute in any way, shape or form. So for companies to make it a milk substitute for the purposes of thickening, whether it be from a barista point of view or even from a non-separation point of view in a beverage, like a hot beverage, they have to add thickeners and gums to it to get it to do that. So the good quality rice milks will literally just be rice water and maybe rice filtered water and maybe a bit of calcium, but they don't really taste good. They don't. They taste so bad. And if you pour them into a cup of tea or coffee, they're gonna split, and you get that foul look.
It's such a trigger. It's such a trigger for me.
It's a trigger for so many people. Just that split in the hot beverage, like so you know, so like rice milk is not something I actually recommend as a milk preference at all for people. But if someone said, if I've got a client in front of me and they're like, look, I love my cup of tea, I've tried almond milk, I fucking hate it in my tea, I've tried oat milk, I've tried this, and they can't do goat's milk or goat's milk's too sour, I'm like, just go and buy a good, I'll recommend a few brands, I'll have a look, I'll be like, just go and get this and just use this so you can still enjoy your cup of tea in the afternoon. And I said, just don't use it for your smoothies and
pick your battles, as we often say.
Pick your battles. Pick your battles. But yeah, generally as a milk substitute, I don't. Rice milk as something you're having all the time in bigger volumes is not something I recommend to clients. Purely because I usually find it's got a lot of vegetable oils, thickeners, gums, and just stuff that we don't want in mass quantities.
Before I want to go into rice milk too, but just to finish off with soy, I do want to talk about plant oils because that's cool. Plant oils are in soy, but I think we might talk about them once we get down to the nut milks because they're kind of in everything. But so soy, we talked about the good, the sort of bad, ugly side of it is, as Carissa was saying there, and then sort of mentioned rice with it. It's like, you know, we are sort of considering the thickeners, the gums, the sugars, the plant oils, which we'll talk about, like how much of them are in there, and choosing brands ideally away from that if it's like a regular milk being consumed for you. And also if you are potentially intolerant to soy, like you actually have an immune reaction to it, that's obviously not great for you. But brand wise, I guess I just wanted to mention here, like I'm curious, Rissy, for what you like, but I actually really like Bonsoy, which people might be like, really? I think Bonsoy is great because it is made from whole soybeans, like non-genetically modified. And I do like that it doesn't have any doesn't have any oils or anything in there. It does have a little bit, off the top of my head, I think it's got a little bit of a sweetener in it, but it's very, very, very high in the soybean content, and it's super creamy and lush. You pay for it, but I love Bonsoy. It's been around for ages. I think also, I should have looked these up before we started. I want to say it's the Pure Harvest soy as well. That's whole soybean, bit of salt, water, but nothing else in it. How about you, Rissy? I'm going to check if I'm right about the Pure Harvest.
Well, I can look up Pure Harvest for you. I was just looking at one that I usually rate if I see it at a cafe for the ingredients. And let's just actually see if it stacks up because I haven't looked at it for ages. It's the Happy Boy soy. Have you heard of that?
No. So this is why I wanted to talk brands.
Yeah. So this is actually, let me just double, like last time I checked.
Oh, yeah. I recognize that label.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pure Harvest, there it is. The organic soy by Pure Harvest. That's another one that is really easy to get in the supermarket. And yeah, ingredients wise, it's just really, really simple.
Okay, here's the ingredients for the Happy Boy soy. This is one that you'll see quite often in baristas in coffee shop spaces, because I think the bonsai is too expensive for baristas to use. But I agree with you with bonsai for home space. But I think a lot of cafes, you'll only see bonsai in maybe the very earthy sort of, alternative sort of cafes where they'll spend the money and charge for people to have that, because I think most mainstream places. But Happy Boy soy is the one that I see a lot in mainstream cafes, and it's got filtered water, whole non-GMO soybeans, minimum 15%, brown sugar, sea salt, calcium carbonate. That's literally it. So it has only, in terms of actual sugars per serve, so per 200 mils, which is what would probably be in a standard 12-ounce coffee cup. Like, so your standard double shot if you're getting out of a mug. Because you got to think when milk froths up, so you're having 200 mils of the milk, but when it froths up, it actually gives you a higher volume. So maybe 250 mils in like a standard mug. But so you're only getting 3 grams of actual sugar in the Happy Boy soy. So if you were having that out, in terms of ingredients, it's clean as fuck still, which is awesome. That hasn't changed. But you are getting the tiniest bit of, like we're talking half a teaspoon of sugar in there as part of a serve. So if that's something that you're worried about, then maybe don't have it. But that's not something personally I'd be concerned about if I was having a coffee out and that was their brand of soy they were using. That's a pretty damn clean coffee shop alternative. And in terms of some of the things we're going to talk about with nut milks, definitely a preference over a lot of the barista blends that are in cafes now. So
no, that's so cool. I do recognize that picture, but I don't think do you see it in supermarkets?
Yeah, the Happy Boy. Yeah, it does. Like Coles and Woolies do stock. It depends on your store. They didn't always used to. But yeah, there we go. Could have just gone to that. It's got it. Clean. So that's good. It's in Coles. I'm not sure. Yeah, I've seen it in supermarkets, but it's typically the one I tell my clients to look for in cafes.
That's so cool. Okay. Yeah, just looking at bonsai too. So it's like the organic certified, everything soy, minimum 14%. And then it's got tapioca syrup. So that's the sweetener that's in it, sea salt, Jacob's tear, which I think from memory is like a type of, it's a natural thickener. I think it comes from a grain, and then a bit of calcium carbonate. And it's 5.5 grams of sugar per 250 mils. So a little bit more. But yeah, and it's you pay for it. But it's just delicious. I love it. And it is available at most supermarkets. I tend to like it. Like, I personally will use this in my porridge. Like, I'll make porridge on water to a point and then just use this to make it nice and creamy, or sometimes make a hot drink out of it. Love it with baking. Yeah,
love it.
But
there
rice
are
milk
recos.
Yeah. So you really said it for me about the tea. So I come from a family of tea drinkers, and everyone who is off dairy is on rice milk. Like, that's how strongly I can back this one up, because other milks just don't tend to work well at all.
No.
There is a compromise, as Chris said, when you drink tea and it comes to rice milk, because a lot of the rice milks just aren't that great on the market. And I do this myself. Like, I personally have rice milk most days in a dandelion tea. That's my thing. I just froth up a really small amount and put it in at night. But I'd sort of pick the best of what I can, because there's a compromise that I personally make, that Carissa said, where I could buy a rice milk that was just rice, water, and a bit of salt. And it's so I've tried them. They are so vile. So I just compromise and I buy a rice milk that's relatively okay, but the one that I get has got a little bit of a plant oil in it. And again, I pick my battles. Like, in the context of everything that I do, it's not going to kill me. I'm fine with that choice. But these are things that we have to consider individually when it comes to rice milk, as to what suits you as an individual, how much you're having as well. So I don't use rice milk as my main milk source. Like I alternate a lot of my different milks. It's really my tea that I use. I'm not using it to like have smoothies and so, unless I'm, okay, that's a lie. Like if I'm out and there's nothing left, of course I'm going to use it. But yeah, I don't use it in that way. I think the thing about rice milk is that it's definitely like there's not really any protein in it. It's just mainly a really kind of high carb, sort of naturally higher sort of sugar type of milk source. It's, as Carissa said too, it's so sweeter naturally, and that can work to your favor depending on what you're having, because obviously I also come to this with like a bit of a baker's cook mind as well, but it doesn't have any fat in it, so it's very like which is why they add a lot of the thickeners and the gums, because yeah, it's just very, very, very watery, so it's not going to suit a lot of things that you're going to cook or make. So it really has its place. And nutritionally, even like usually if it's going to have calcium, it's because they've added calcium. Like they're going to try and bump it up by adding nutrients to it, as opposed to it naturally having much. Like
it's just fuck all. It's naturally. Just got
exactly. A funny story for you guys. I should have mentioned this with soy too. I'll put them in the show notes. So on the website, there is actually a recipe for homemade soy milk, which I'm sure no one has ever tried. Making homemade soy milk was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. But I made it all, and then just as it was all done and finished, I got really sick. I don't think it was COVID, it was something else. But essentially it sat in the fridge and it went off, which I was just devastated about. Anyway, there is a recipe. If you make it from scratch, it's pretty amazing, but it's like full on. Rice milk. Sometime in the last 6 months, I was like, I'm going to try making rice milk, because I don't want to have that bought rice milk, because even the brand that I buy now, like it's been this whole rigmarole where they keep changing it. Like they don't say on the ingredients that it's changed, but I can tell you when I go to froth it that it doesn't work. Oh, so I was like, I'm going to make my own. And if you watch my stories, you might have seen it quite a few months ago. It seemed like it was going okay. I tasted it. It just tasted really kind of grainy, and I thought it probably needs some heat just to like take the graininess out of it. I put it on the stove. The rice started to cook in it. It turned into this gelatinous mess. And I didn't know what to do with it. It was like this big pot of snot, white snot.
It's almost like a congee or something.
It tasted like nothing. It was so weird. It just tasted like nothing. So then I like poured it into a container and thought, I'll come back to it. What I'll do is I'll let it cool, and then maybe I'll blend that with water to like blend it down. But it just sat in the fridge and just turned into this like moldy thing that got poured on the compost. So there is no homemade rice milk as of yet that has happened that has made its way to the website. Hence the bought rice milk situation.
I commend your efforts though for trying to make milk out of rice, because I wouldn't even fucking bother. I know what you're saying though about them changing things. I've noticed this a few times lately. Like they've also, like with a couple of the milks, the way they froth, I've noticed that a few times with some. I get the odd batch of my milk that won't froth the same, and I know it's because it's got a higher water content. I know that. But also I've noticed it with a few other things, and it's probably a piss off rant thing that I could have. I've thought about it a few times. I need to jump on social media and they're so clever with marketing. The Be-Free wraps have done that as well. I don't think the ingredients have changed too much, but they've thinned them out. So they're advertising it like all of a sudden, oh, it's less calories. Yeah, it's less calories because you've skimped on something. Now they don't wrap as well, and they break open when I'm wrapping more often, and they're thinner. So you're still charging me $8 for a packet of these fucking things, but you're literally probably giving me 80% of what you were. Like, that's not cool.
This is a thing. We'll get people irate with this. There's actually a name for it, and I can't think of it, but it's something that's happening at the moment where a lot of brands are skimping on
rice
like
crackers,
even with
they're all doing it.
Yes, rice crackers.
Used to be 100 grams, now they're fucking 90.
Yep, you got it. Yep. So it's totally a thing.
Totally a thing.
So the rice milk that I use, I'm just gonna where is it?
Back in.
So I use at the moment this is the one that has worked for me, the Vita Soy rice milk unsweetened. So it's rice.
I know that one.
Where's the ingredients? It's just filtered water, whole brown rice, minimum 13%. So it has sunflower oil in it. That's the part that I don't like. I'm not dead yet. Things are okay. But I also wouldn't choose to have this in large quantities every day because it's probably the cheapest plant-based sunflower oil that they can get to make this milk. Sorry, Vita Soy, I'm sure that's the case though. And then it's got a little bit of calcium and sea salt in it. So that's sort of as far as it's the cleaner version that I found, but definitely not going to lie, it's also the only one that froths and that I like in my milk. So compromise of taste versus that. So summary, rice milks, the good, like in teas, the sort of flavor profile it can give you, that bit of higher carb. I like that sometimes to myself as far as certain demands with training, but there is a bit more in the kind of if we're going to call the bad, ugly space based on just what really exists in this market, and just be practical about it as far as how much you're consuming, and maybe think about rotating it with other milks. Don't think that it's going to kill you. Just be wise about it. Nut milks.
Can I just add something on the rice thing while we're on it? And it's actually not even about rice. It's about we haven't included it in this, but I had a client the other day, and she buys an oat milk from the supermarket.
Oh, shite. I totally forgot about oat milk.
I know. I wrote it same. I wrote it down when we started talking. As soon as she said camels, I was like, fuck, we haven't mentioned oat milk. Oat milk is one worth mentioning, but also a client of mine has been getting her oat milk in the supermarket. I didn't write down the brand, but the oil that they add is olive oil, because she adds it to her tea. And I said, because she uses an oat milk for smoothies and teas. And I said, oh, okay. I said, if you're using it a lot, I said, can we talk about brand? And she's like, no, it's a really good one. It's got a clean oil in it. And I was like, most of the oils aren't clean. I was really hesitant. And she's like, no, they use olive oil. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And she brought it up and showed me, and it was olive oil. So I'm just trying to think the name of it. I could ask her actually, but someone else might actually know that. I didn't. It was just one of those quick conversations, and I was like, and I looked at it, I'm like, yep, that's awesome. And I thought, I'll remember that, and of course I don't. So, but that in tea, actually, she said is really nice. So
actually, my mum said that too, because she's a tea drinker like nothing else, and she said she tried oat milk recently, but it's usually the same, right? In that it's going to have the oils and the thickening agents in it. Not as many thickening agents, because it's kind of got a little bit more volume.
It's got its own sort of volume, but I definitely put it into the rice milk section. Same thing, it's going to be higher carb. It's kind of similar to rice milk, just not as watery, because of the oat grain itself has a bit more substance to it when they're making the milk, so it doesn't usually. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention there is one on the market that has olive oil in it that is good for tea if someone wants to give that a crack.
Maybe have a little Google and see if you can see it. Well, I'll get started on nut milk.
You get started on nut milks.
I've had a look with oat milk, even at the supermarket, it's really the same situation as the rice milks. There's a whole load of them, even the ones that are your kind of pure harvest and so forth. They still essentially have that oil that's added. They don't have, a lot of the pure harvest and so forth don't have any of the additional thickening agents, but they do have the organic high oleic sunflower oil, which we'll talk about when we get to that. But nut milks. So nut milks obviously vary a lot, even in the nuts being used, but the most common one obviously is almond. You do get a lot of these days macadamia milk that you'll get in the supermarket, but in health food stores you're going to see a whole variety. But we'll probably talk more about almond milk here today for obvious reasons. So I think the thing with almond milk, why it's just what?
From the ingredients of some of these oat milks, trying to find it, and there is some shit on the market. Holy crap. Sorry, guys. And I was listening, Jess. I'm just trying to find this oat milk for everyone. But yeah, very disappointing. Very, very disappointing.
What about,
sorry.
if you, try oat milk with olive oil. There's one, this is a thing. There's some beautiful one. There's one called oat milk, OMG. That's an Australian made one with olive oil in it. And it looks beautiful. Like I can see it here. It's made in Victoria. See, I haven't even seen this around, but some of these, it's also about what is actually viable that you can buy. But yeah, this one's oats, olive oil, acacia gum. There you go. There's a gum in it that I wouldn't have any issues with, but it just depends on whether your gut can handle it. Bit of calcium and salt. So that's really lovely. But I've never seen that before in my life.
I haven't either, but I think that's it because it was a blue one when she showed it to me on her phone.
Okay.
I think that might actually be it. I thought I'll recognize the carton when I see it, and I've just Googled it, and I think it was that. Yeah. That's all that was in it. It was acacia gum, olive oil, oat, water. Yeah. So I think that was actually it. But I have never seen that in the supermarkets myself personally. Either. But again, that's probably not the best option because I do a lot of online shopping. So just ignore me.
Well, guys, I hope you're loving our live Googling. But I just also looked up this brand on Woolies site and it did actually pop up. So I don't know what Woolies, but oat milk, goodness, oh my God, oat milk, $4 has come up. Yeah. So it might be available in some supermarkets. So here you go. We learn it here today. This might be an option.
You heard it here first.
And it's Victorian. Love that.
Yeah, love that. Love that for you.
So almond milk. Look, it's obviously really popular. It's definitely something that I think comes back to flavor, right? Like nuts are creamy. As soon as you blend them with water, they're going to create that nice creamy consistency. So they really do work well in this like dairy-free space. Like they're just wonderful. Also, the good thing about using nuts or seeds even is that you will, to a point, get a little bit of their natural mineral content and their natural sort of vitamin content. Not a lot, but it will contribute way more than probably rice would. And very, very small. Like I know people sometimes think of nuts being like protein and so forth, but guys, you're not going to get much protein from your nut milk. Like you look at the percentage of nuts that are in there and the fact that they're like all strained and we're just getting out the nut juice, as Damien calls it. Like, yeah, don't rely on them for getting your protein content up. So I love almond milk. Like, yeah, that's no secret. Like I make my almond milk personally. Do you have to make your own nut milks? No, you don't. I just think the good thing about nut milks is that they are easy to make, a lot easier than soy and rice milk. Like we're talking just the time of soaking something overnight and then spending like sort of 10 to 15 minutes, like straining it off and putting it away. It is easier to do. So that's another really great option I feel about nut milks. But from a bought concept, this really plays into what we've been saying about these others, doesn't it? About like what's in those ingredients.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, I think realistically this is another cost comparison to a point because as you were saying before, Rissy, you can look at like the barista blends. So things like, what's the one you mentioned before that's really popular? That's at the barista stuff. Yeah, like Milk Lab and stuff is pretty expensive, but they do use a lot of gums and thickeners. But that's because probably any shitty barista can still get good foam. Would I be right?
Yeah, 100%. And also they have gotten worse over time, I'm going to say. I feel like when Milk Lab first came on the market, they weren't as loaded with, I'm just going to say it for what it is, shit, as what it is now. So sorry, Milk Lab.
We're not going to diss brands.
Well, it's fine for what they're trying to achieve. They've achieved it. They've created a frothy, silky textured milk without, but fake milk. That is perfect. But it is. Let me just bring up Milk Lab because it's got
I
quite a
just
bit of
did the
sugar
same
in it.
thing. It's crazy, the ingredients.
Their coconut milk. Oh my God. I literally bought that from a coffee shop one day because I was out of my own milk and I literally, nothing was like, I couldn't be bothered to go into the supermarket. I needed something in a hurry. So I thought, I'll just run down to the local coffee shop and buy some Milk Lab almond, coconut milk. Because I thought, that's probably the better. Oh my God. It was so jacked with sugar. Anyway, let's go Milk Lab almond milk. So not to diss companies, but it is the most popular one. So let's just do it anyway. So just to read you guys the ingredients. And again, if you're having this as a one-off when you're out, I'm going to speak for myself, but I don't have a problem with the one-off. It's more if you're someone who's buying your coffee out every single day. And I feel like we might be going back. I can't remember when we talked about this last time in a podcast, because I feel like last time we did it, again, maybe it didn't have as much sugar and oil in it, but it has changed. Like as they've upgraded their product, it has changed a bit as well. So I feel like I am getting a bit stricter with this, even with clients. Like if you asked me 5 years ago, when almond milk was probably more just almonds, water and things like that in coffee shops, it didn't have as much stuff in it, but also we weren't as freaked out about some of the oils and stuff that were in there. I probably wasn't as strict about it. Whereas now, the more that we know, the more that we're seeing it, the more that it's in everything that seems to be plant-based, we have to get a bit stricter with these things as well. Mm-hmm. But ingredients for Milk Lab's almond milk is filtered water, Australian almonds 3.5%, sugar, vegetable oil, which is canola and sunflower, maltodextrin from corn, mineral salts, potassium citrate and dipotassium phosphate, mineral calcium, vegetable gum, so gellan gum, xanthan gum, and locust bean gum, and an emulsifier from sunflower, lecithin, and salt. That's a fucking lot.
It is a lot, isn't it?
So, like,
and again, it's not like they're, I just want to be conscious of, like, they're not carcinogens or anything from that sort of level. Like, we're not talking about nitrates and so forth, but they are like when, as you're saying, Rissy, if you're having this literally a big glass of this every day, like, what is all of that doing to your gut? Like, it's certainly not ideal.
Yeah, I agree. It's also too, like, again, it's probably not something to unpack on this podcast, but it's also too, like, it's about the totality of what you're doing over the day and over the week with these sorts of things. It's not saying that if you ingest a small amount of a canola and sunflower oil seed blend, that's going to kill you. It's not. But if everything you're doing over the course of a day and a week actually volumes up to quite a large amount of this stuff, then the gastrointestinal and the liver, so the metabolic impacts are going to be a bit significant for you. But if you're someone who eats very clean, makes their own gluten-free bread or makes their own breads, you're not buying store-bought stuff, you're not eating a high food processed diet, and your treat is on the weekends you go out and have a store-bought cappuccino and it's made on Milk Lab almond milk, that's not an issue. But if you're someone who's probably getting quite a volume of, seed and vegetable oils and gums and things like that over a period of a week, I think that's where you need to kind of weigh up, okay, well, what do I actually want here? Like what's my luxury and what do I need to really rein in? And so we're not slamming Milk Lab. We're just saying that it is the most common one out there. And if you're someone who's ordering 1 to 2 coffees a day, because let's face it, when I switched Mick to almond milk, because he was getting eczema behind his ears or some sort of dermatitis, like I got him a lot off dairy, he automatically went to almond milk. But he would buy, just before we had a coffee machine, he was getting 2 of these a day. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, now that doesn't sit right with me. Like, because, I would just have a black coffee, but he would go to and so then, and that's the thing. It's kind of like you're trying to do the right thing by, maybe fixing one condition, but are you setting yourself up for another? So it's so much of it is about volume. So I actually pulled Mick back off this almond milk. We actually bought a coffee machine. So we had a bit more control over the situation. And he now drinks a long black with normal dairy in it, but just a smaller volume of that. So anyway, so that's a whole big rant that I probably didn't need to go on. Sorry, guys.
No, it's good. It is good for context. Like, again, I can think of some clients in the past that were buying Milk Lab for home and they were using that as their main milk. And again, I was just like, it doesn't sit well, I think, with like your overall purpose of health and what we're working on here. So let's just get you a different milk. But find that sort of space that it works for you. Be realistic. Like, don't start like feeling like you can't ever go out and have like your coffee or chai or whatever it is just because they don't use the exact right perfect brand. But it's the day to day that adds up, that we're talking about in the context of everything else you do. You mentioned also obviously about the plant, or like about the oils a bit there. So I think that's also, I guess, I feel like if there's anything with the what's added, that's probably the main component that is a little worrisome as far as how much you're consuming. The gums, some of these gums and so forth, to a point, again, depending on your gut health, I don't know, like it's all sort of questionable. But these plant oils and the cheaper types of milks, or as we've just seen with not so cheaper, the problem is that they're very, very, very refined. They'll oxidize very easily, and that's where we do have problems with them becoming more of a I guess the easiest way to describe, people have heard the word sort of free radical, or like being oxidized and becoming more basically inflammatory. So it is more of a worry as far as inflammation goes. You will see a varied amount, like you'll see canola oil, you'll see sunflower oil, you'll see, I think I read one out before, that high oleic sunflower oil. You see that around a bit.
Yep.
That's more of like, it's kind of looked at to not be as bad, because the way that they have the way they've sort of changed the oil, or the way that I don't know whether they modify it themselves, like through mechanical mechanisms, or whether it's like a particular type of breed of sunflower oil. But essentially the monosaturated fats are a little higher. So not as many of the polys, and the polys are the ones that when heated will very quickly oxidize and become inflammatory. So the concept is that, like, if you're heating the milks and so forth, that the monos are a bit more stable, but it still has some of those polys in it. So at the end of the day, those plant oil, we've talked about these types of oils in other podcasts. That's why we both just like fizzed over the oat milk with the olive oil in it, because it's a more stable oil. This is where, same as what we're saying with the other factors, if it's in your milks and it's an occasional thing, like, is it the end of the world? No. I've said quite openly with you guys, I have a milk that's got some of this hyaluronic sunflower oil in it a little bit most days, and that's just something that I choose to do. So I just think, though, you do need to be conscious if you're dealing with a lot of inflammation, a lot of gut issues, a lot of hormone issues. There's a lot of studies being done. There's been studies for ages on these types of oils. I guess it's just not something that you hear as much about.
No, like when we're talking about, I was just going to say, like, we're talking about like your canolas and your just straight vegetable oils and stuff like that. Like, if you turn around a nut milk brand in the supermarket and it says canola oil or vegetable oil on it, stay away from that. Like, put it back. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But if you pick up something, like, put it down, leave it alone. But if you find something that, like Jess does with her rice milk, like, and I know Pure Harvest, I think, was something like their almond milk doesn't have any oil in it, which is, again, when we're starting to talk about recommendations, like, that is a big one for my clients that I recommend. Like, the Pure Harvest unsweetened almond milk and the Nutty Bruce, like, they're my two picks, because they don't have any oils in them and they're clean. Yeah, look at us go. But their hazelnut milk and their cashew milk, I'd have to double check this again, but from memory, last time I looked, their other nut milks do have the high I can never say it. Anyway, sunflower oil in it. So just, again, like, just knowing that if you're, depending on what you're going to do, like, if you aren't a good milk frother and you want just your one cappuccino in the morning, and generally your health is really good and you don't have any canola or vegetable shitty oils coming in from other food sources, and you're like, this is my sacrifice, I just want this, cappuccino in the morning that I'm going to make myself that's got this, then to me that's okay. Like, if that's your choice, that's your choice. But I think if you're going to do that, choose the better of all the evils. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or learn to froth milk that doesn't have any oils in it, which maybe I could do a video on.
Maybe do a little. You know what? That'd be very popular, I'm sure.
I feel like it actually might be. I've mentioned it to a few
YouTube.
clients, and like, yeah, can you show me how to do that? And I'm like, yeah, I probably should. I need someone to actually hold the.
Yeah, I'm down with that. I think the thing with almond milk too, or with nut milks in general, is there's a lot more in the market. So like when we're talking about rice milk, it's really, really hard because there isn't really much. You're kind of choosing between the lesser of evils, but there's really no reason why you need to regularly buy shitty almond milk or coconut milk or some of these other milks. Like you can easily find in the supermarket the Nutty Brews, the Pure Harvest, the Mandola, is that what it's called? Mandoli. Oh my God, Jessica, this is Italian. This is brutal. Mandole. Mandole. I'm going to say, I'm so bastardizing it. I think it's Mandole. Orchard. Yeah. Anyway, that one's another one. It's just like almonds, water, bit of salt. They're all up around 7-8% almonds too. So again, you're paying a bit more for them. Like the other stuff was like 2-3%. So they're richer and creamier without all the crap because they don't need to be. So I think it makes sense here again to like choose these brands because you can get them, like spend a few bucks and get them, or make almond milk. Join me in my cult on my weekly 8-day cult where every 8 days I make 8 cups of almond milk and then freeze them in jars.
Yeah, you freeze them.
Well, I put enough so I fill a jar. I fill for anyone watching YouTube, I'll fill like what is this? Is this a liter? I'll put like
I think they're like
enough for
mils or something.
Yeah, so basically about 3 cups worth. So almond milk fresh will last for 3 days, 4 days max. So I'll put enough in a bottle and put that in the fridge. But anything more than that, which is 4 glasses for the batch that I make, I put into like cup portions and freeze. So I just pull them out the night before and then they defrost obviously overnight. And then I use that in the morning to make my matcha. But honestly, almond milk, it is easy to make, but the other thing I'll also quickly say is nut milks like macadamia or cashew or even hemp seeds are meant to be good for this. I haven't tried it. You can get away with not having to strain them because the thing that pisses people off about nut milks is the straining. If you could just blend it and it's done, like easy, right? I think even Carissa would potentially consider it. But if you have to like pour it through a nut milk bag and strain it, that's where people are like, can't be bothered. But macadamia nuts and cashews are so creamy that they don't tend to really leave much residual kind of fibery bits at all. So yeah, you can make them, particularly if you're using them for like birches and cereals and so forth. I don't know about in coffees and stuff, you might still get the slightest bit of grittiness or graininess you don't like. But yeah, macadamia, cashews and hemp seeds are meant to be good for just that. So it's a little bit of a FYI, but I'll put links in the show notes to like some of the homemade milk options, the almond milk as well, in case anyone's interested. But that is, I think, our roundup. Have we missed anything?
That's no, I don't think so. I'm just trying to think. We did. Oh, the only you mentioned coconut milk briefly.
It's a nut.
But again, it's a nut. It's a nut.
But I know I panicked before too. We said it.
Falls in there with all the other nuts. Just like oat milk falls in with rice because it's a grain.
It's a grain. Actually, a tip on coconut milk. There are some brand, like it falls into everything we've said with the nut milks as well. But a little tip, if you buy pure canned coconut cream, so a brand like A-Arm is a really classic one, it's been around for ages. It's just like nothing else but coconut cream. And you just literally put that in a blender with water. You can make your own coconut milk really quickly.
Milk. Yeah.
Yep. That's a nice idea too.
Yeah, it is. It is. So many options. I'm like literally I just buy mine. I'm so funny like that, aren't I? Like I could do it, but just the thought of actually making almond milk to me, I'm like, oh fuck that.
Exactly.
But what you mentioned about you are right. Like I could maybe be swayed with the cashew, but maybe not.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Maybe. Probably not.
I think that rounds it all up. I mean, if anyone's got any questions about it, hopefully it's helped. I know we've mentioned some brands, which I'm sure is helpful. I hope we've eased your mind a little bit. Like if you've been really stressed about this area, just like the classic, we say a lot, sort of choose your battles and, you know, where this fits for you, and just kind of broken it down. I hope if anything, we've kind of, just dispersed some myths or some worries, which is something that we like to do.
I was thinking, actually, it was funny because I thought about this halfway through, but then we got talking about other stuff. But I actually think a good podcast for you and I to do would be things that we I don't want to even use the word compromise, but things that we don't sweat it over. Like you said, for you, that's your rice milk. Because I think obviously on social media, there's so much type A stuff happening, even around this whole, you know, oil space and all that, which is fine. Like people need to be aware, but I do think, like you and I always talk about, it creates so much fear and in the space of what can I do, what I can't do, you know, all the things. So I felt like what would be a good podcast one day, maybe in the new year, things we do that the nutrition world would shun us for. Just our little things that we have that we're like, fuck it, don't care. Because I feel like I've got a few. I know you'd have few, and look, let's be honest, they're not going to be as bad as like what, you know, a lot of other people just do on the daily, you know. But it's not like we're driving through the KFC drive-through every fucking week. It's not going to be anything like that. But just little things, like things we have in our kitchen that we know like have been shunned in the nutrition world or the Instagram space, and we're just like, fuck it, I don't care, I like this, it stays. Yeah, so I feel like that could actually be quite a fun podcast now that you just said, like, even with this, like putting people's mind at ease. Everything you do, guys, is just about like the 80-20 rule, if you want to apply that, but also just try not to sweat the small stuff. If you're someone who generally really looks after your health and you eat a clean diet, and by clean I use that word with inverted commas, but a mostly whole food diet, and you're, you know, like Jess, and you're making your almond milk, or you're buying a really good quality, you know, sourdough bread, or making it from scratch, because there's lots of those you know, if you're someone who's putting in all of that effort, moving your body, like, don't sweat the small stuff. Like the small stuff is exactly that. It's the small stuff. Like if you go out and you have a cappuccino after your, you know, brunch with your partner on the weekend, please don't let the thought of the oil in that milk completely ruin the fact that you just had a beautiful brunch with your partner or your best friend or your child or whatever it might be, because, you know, there's so much within our control, but there's also so much that is not within our control. So just, if you're someone who generally looks after your health and puts a lot of time into doing the right things and the good things, then don't sweat the little things, just enjoy them. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. No, well said. Absolutely well said. Love it. Love it. We're going to do more of these types. If you guys like this type of format where we can break down some particular areas for you, can you please let us know? Because that helps us. We're thinking about doing one on bread, like gluten-free bread. We'd love to do that, just to break that down for you, because that's another big area. But if there's particular areas food-wise where you're looking for more guidance, or you'd love our opinion, just let us know. Slide into our DMs, share this episode, let us know when you're sharing your thoughts. And as always, like we've had a few of you popping in, which we so appreciate, onto the iTunes and leaving us reviews. That has just been lovely, and leaving your 5 stars. And I got to say, if you're an avid listener and subscriber, there's a tongue twister. Thank you in the last week for putting up with probably the billion pings on your phone for getting episodes that were dropping. We had some issues with iTunes dropping the link of the podcast, and for some reason it was saying like 0 episodes, which was a little stressful. So they were all uploading again, hence all of the pings. But we did notice over the weekend there was like this huge increase in episodes being listened to. So obviously a lot of you had some catching up to do. So I hope you're not sick of our voices.
How could you be?
How could you?
I get sick of my voice.
We might end it up there. I don't think we've got any. Did you have any recommendations? I do have a client in like 7 minutes, so I probably need to round this up. Sorry, guys. We promise we'll have recommendations. They're like building up in the background.
Yeah, they're doing something like that.
Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.